two, one.
International superstar, Miss Teja Smith.
You are now tuned in to Butter Bee Rocker on Transparency Talks Podcast.
Hit the wrong button. Welcome to another episode of Transparency Talks Podcast. I am your girl, Butterbee Rocka. It is a beautiful day. We are all still here. So that's always amazing. Listen, I have an amazing show for you today. Let me make my screen bigger. Oh, that's too big. But I have an amazing show for you guys today. We have with us Teja Smith. She is a social media director and specialist and the founder and CEO of Get Social with Teja. How you doing, Teja?
I'm doing great. Excited to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
I am so pleased to have you a part of the show. So here at Transparency, I like to just dive right on in. Can you give everybody a little bit of background about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So my name's Teja Smith. I recently got married, so I'm doing a little change of identity. I'm going through identity crisis, what I've been telling people. So formerly Teja Foster. I have been in social media for about 8 years now. I have my own agency called Get Social with Teja, which is a political advocacy and social justice awareness agency made up of women of color only. We're based in Los Angeles, but we are across America in general, like to be, everywhere we can be. And I'm originally from Oakland. I've been living in LA for about 13 years now. So kind of back and forth, you could say.
Okay. So what made you want to get into social media?
I went to college at Cal State Northridge here in LA. And I had always, even from high school, I was like head of the marketing club, marketing this. I studied to be a publicist. And I got out of college, I got a publicist job, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. But what I did notice while I was working there, that a lot of the requests and things people were asking were really social media needs that they were inquiring about. And so I saw that before Instagram got monopolized, how it is today, and really saw the forwardness that social media was going towards. And kind of hopped on it before it became really a big deal to other people. So I was, flipping some small Black and brown businesses, flipping their websites, giving them some better social media posts. And then I landed my first gig doing Schools Not Prisons, which was a 12 statewide tour that went into prisons and under deserved communities and gave free shows, free concerts, and talked about the awareness of the schools to prison pipeline. So landing that definitely opened my eyes more to what I already knew was in the back of my head. Growing up in Oakland, my family were in the nonprofit space. So that's always been right there. But getting into it actually made me realize, like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely makes sense. Okay. So your agency is behind some of the biggest names in social justice organizations in the world. Can you name a few and give a little quick synopsis of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my baby client who's been here since the beginning is Rock the Vote, which we all know and love. And most of us got registered to vote with Rock the Vote, including myself. So even when I started with them, it was like a full circle moment for me. But Rock the Vote is one of my biggest clients. They are literally one of the creators of online voter registration, and they have been doing it for 30 plus years. Last year we helped register over 2 million people for the 2020 election. And again, I've been working with them since about 2018. So we've been registering people nonstop. So that's been a huge accomplishment and a lot of contributions to what we see going on today. Another one of my clients is She the People, which is a political organization that focuses on women of color getting elected into office. Last year, we helped facilitate Joe Biden and his team in getting Kamala in office. So again, my first year open was like, let's go for everything. Let's do it all. But they are amazing to work with. They also focus on down ballot women, a lot of the women that we hear about on Twitter and a lot of the conversations, but we're pushing for their campaigns pushing for them to win and celebrating their big wins that they have as well. Another one of my great clients is also with filmmaker Ava DuVernay, which is Leap Action. We help with basically putting the police officers that murder Black people at the forefront. Often when someone is murdered, you hear about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castillo, but we never hear about the police officers that actually murdered them and aren't held accountable. Even if they are held accountable, justice is not seen. So what we do is we commission a ton of different artists to tell these stories in different art forms, which has been absolutely amazing to see. I mean, we've had different like dinner menus telling a story. We've had interactive paintings that have been showed. So that's been truly amazing, and a lot of advocacy and putting a lot of these police officers' names to the forefront, because what happens is they murder people, they get off, and then they move on to another county because no one ever remembered who murdered Michael Brown. They only remember Michael Brown's name. Mm-hmm. We also this year kicked off a campaign called CSU Night, which had a lot to do with the Stop AAPI Hate. What I loved about this campaign is that it didn't only just focus on the standard of what AAPI community looks like. It was very diverse. It was Black and Brown solidarity. It was about people up and down the API spectrum. And we hosted a special on MTV that covered all of these people. Her was involved, Saweetie was involved, and we held kind of a national rally against stopping AAPI hate and let people know about the history that Black and Asian solidarity has, that's been throughout decades of history that is often forgotten. And so we're still running that campaign and have a lot of things. We just did a really big show with Sesame Street, with them debuting their first AAPI kind of Muppet, I guess. I was going to say cartoon, but their first Muppet. So we've had a hell of a year, and those are some of our biggest clients. But we also work with a lot of the smaller grassroots organizations that are putting a lot of the bills forward in California specifically, since that's where we're mainly located at.
Okay, so I'm going to dive into some of the things that you just talked about a little bit more. So your agency helped register over 2 million millennials. First of all, that's major. How vital do you think social media is to the current political landscape?
It's everything. I mean, you see something that may start out as a joke on Twitter, and it's like, oh, then it gets a little traction. Then you see a petition, and somehow Joe Biden is talking about it now. Social media is the strength of everything that we do in the day and age. I mean, for the previous 4 years, we were essentially getting dictated through our former president via Twitter. So the impact that social media has on day-to-day lives, and the pressure that even with police accountability that we put on people via social media, it means everything to me, and it means everything to our work, because I don't know where we would be, or where a lot of like the Me Too movements would be, if women and different individuals could speak up for themselves, which is why things are coming out 20, 30 years later, because people didn't have that type of platform back then. So I think social media for social justice in general, as well as when it comes to the political landscape, is key. We see AOC, who's gained a lot of traction because she's on live at night, and while she's cooking dinner, she's on live talking to people about different bills and what's really going on in Congress, which is something we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was your experience of running the social media campaign for CSU Night on MTV? That's big.
I will tell you that they came maybe 3 weeks before the show, and they were like, hey, we have nothing. And I was like, oh, great. It was like 2 months before my wedding also. So I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I was like, when June comes, I'm out. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I'm out. But that was truly amazing. And like I said, what I appreciated about it the most was their willingness to have, to include everyone. They weren't just focused on major celebrities. They were focused on people that impacted the AAPI community. And it taught my agency a lot about that side of everything. We do so much Black and Brown solidarity, but often Asian people are left out of the conversation when it comes to the Brown term. So that was impactful for us to really start digging deep into that, especially with the rise in crime against the AAPI community, starting with COVID, started with, the mass shooting that happened in Georgia. There's been a lot going on that I think we've shunned from, because there's so much going on in the Black community, that it was great to kind of see that side of it and get intertwined in a lot of the things that they were doing too.
Mm-hmm. So what is digital activism, and why is it so important today?
Digital activism, it can look many different ways. I often tell people that it's a lot to take in. None of this work, it helps me sleep well at night, but it also keeps me up. Having to keep updated on all of the outrageous things that are happening in the world that you have to quickly respond to. There's often when there's a trial happening or breaking news. I know when George Floyd, Derek Chauvin was indicted for George Floyd's murder. Even though it was a win for us, I broke down crying and I was like, everyone take the rest of the day off. It's a lot, but it's needed because that accountability of having those videos and having those people's faces plastered all over social media is impactful in many ways. It often leads to indictments, it leads to trials, and it leads to a lot of things. I tell people to be as involved as they would like to be. I often tell people, create not a fake email, but create an email, sign up for petitions, sign your name anywhere you can, let the email, the spam, whatever, the junk roll in, but just as much as I advocate for voting, petitions, and paying attention to things like that are also just as important. And all of that comes from digital activism. There's not a lot we can do without it, especially in the age of a pandemic. It's like, where can I even go? We used to be tabling at events or see each other out at concerts, which is, a huge establishment of what Rock the Vote used to do. And that element has been completely gone in the biggest election of our lives. So having to navigate that, I think in 2020, I've been doing it, like I said, for over 8 years now. And people are just like, what do you mean you do social media? And what do you mean it's for political advocacy? And I think 2020, people were really like, oh, this is what you do. And this is why you do it. It was a big change and a big pivot where people really understood and could finally see the other side of social media. Because before, people were just like, oh, it's influencers and I can be this and I can be a YouTube star. And I was always here like, yeah, and you could help push forward a campaign and help get a bill signed. And they were like, can I? So now people really understand that and they can follow through with it and feel that they, a lot of celebrities are now like, oh, I need to do something with my page. I need to do more than just post about my movies coming out. I need to stand up for my own race, other races that I'm aligned with, and things that align with myself too. So digital activism is everything. And like I said, I think one of my prideful moments of 2020 was like people realizing that social media shouldn't be the first to go because it's everything you need these days. It was the only thing keeping us connected, really.
It really was. I don't think social media is ever going anywhere, ever. So what are your thoughts on social justice for 2021 versus 2020? And do you see any changes, pros and cons?
There's always going to be changes. I think the biggest change is definitely people thinking that, okay, in 2020, I did my job. I don't need to pay attention anymore. And they couldn't be more wrong. And even a lot of people that are, that had their views on voting and who we voted in and what was right, what was wrong. I always advocate for voting once is not going to change the world. We've been voting for the lesser evil for decades on and decades before. It would take us the next 30 years of consistently voting, consistently paying attention to really see the change that we want to see. So my biggest kind of just adjustment is, of course, seeing the drop from this year of, people even being like, just last year we were fighting for George Floyd and this year we're making fun of da-da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, and that's the realness of social media. It moves fast. One day we're mourning, the next day we're laughing at somebody, and then we're realizing we shouldn't have laughed at them. And even with next year, people really aren't aware that that's an election year, but it's the most important election year. It's a midterm election which actually impacts your community and what's going on around you. So my biggest pivot that I definitely see is, of course, I want to say, like, Kendrick Lamar said it the best, of the overnight activists of everybody paying attention and then the drop off. And I really want people to be consistent in it and not get, deplenished by what's going on in the administration, thinking like, well, this is why I don't vote, because this is not what I want. And it's like, it's never going to be what you want unless you keep voting. And that's just the truthfulness of it.
Yeah. So would you say it's challenging to be a political activist?
Absolutely. Some people are always like, I don't know how you do it, but I'm glad you do it. As well as me being an agency owner, a founder of an agency that is doing so successful, I'm still a speaker to my own community. I make these down ballot lists of what people should be voting for. I'm like, hey, going to the voting booth sometimes is intimidating. You might not know what all of these propositions are. You might not understand what's going on. Here's some type of cheat sheet for if you're thinking in a certain, mindset. Here's why you should vote on these things. And here's my help so we can start moving forward and get these people out that shouldn't be out, shouldn't be out here anymore. And, I get people arguing with me, calling me racist. Oh, my work is this. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to tell your employer. And I'm like, that's fine. My website's in my email. And I get to stand by, what I say and the things that I do, but it's never easy. Opinions are always flawed. People have backgrounds that aren't necessarily kind of aligning with what you necessarily believe. You went to high school with somebody, you think you social media know them, and then they turn out to be some like crazy person. You're like, great, I'm so happy you turned out this way. But yeah, it's definitely not easy, but I think I enjoy it the most because I see how many people aren't involved, and I'm not pushing them to be involved. I just want people to be more aware and understand that this is our life, and I don't know if I'll ever see the change that I want to see in my lifetime, but I do hope that my grandchildren will be able to see it and all the things that I'm fighting for in today's time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So what was your mental and emotional state during COVID, and how did it affect you personally and professionally?
During COVID, I often I really think I blanked out. What was interesting for 2020 was that in 2019, I left my old agency job and I was like, I'm just going to go back freelance. I'm tired of feeling like I'm going into an office and I can do this by myself. And, I knew what I was doing. So I was like, I want to go back, to my rooftop days where I can just, go to the Ace Hotel, open up my laptop and enjoy myself. And then COVID hit and I was like, okay, that's different. And I had like one or two clients that I was doing fine by myself. It was an election year coming up. So like Rock the Vote was one of my clients, Alliance for Boys and Men of Color. And then I picked up She the People just on some like, okay, I'm gonna hire an assistant. We'll get this done. And then COVID happened. And it was like these smaller clients that I had, which are change agents for the community, needed double the work. And they're like, okay, we're gonna bump up your rate, your per diem, and we need this amount of posts, we need this type of strategy. And I'm like, okay, like, let me figure out what I was going to do. So then I had an assistant and a little bit extra help. And then we were like getting the wave of it. And then I think by like May, we were like, okay, we got this. And then George Floyd was murdered. And I was like, we do not have this. Like I need to hire more people. I need to figure this out. I wasn't necessarily against opening an agency, but it never popped up in my mind. I never saw myself as a business owner, but it came to a time in 2020 when I was like, I can either create a space for women that I've always wanted, or I can keep running and hiding from it. And especially in this very, very important moment where people are dying by the day and we're still being murdered by the police, being out during the day. And I had a decision to make, so my mental really in 2020 was so in hustler mode. I don't even know what I would have done if 2020 wasn't that way, because the election was so heavy. The impact of COVID was so heavy. I was really running wild, to be completely honest. And it was me and my then fiance, like in our 1-bedroom apartment. We're both working, both doing stuff. And I'm just like cooped up in my apartment, having all these situations happen. I ended up producing our first like digital show with Rock the Vote, putting that together. I was doing so many first in 2020. And then it was going on like, okay, and I have to be like fully masked and clothed when I go to the grocery store. It was a lot. It was a lot. After the election, it was my 30th birthday, and me and my fiance went to Tulum. Well, my husband now went to Tulum, and I was like, I'm not answering everyone. And everyone was like, please don't answer me. I'm not emailing you. They're like, please take some time. I was like, I'm going to be safe. I'm not going to go out. I just need to be away from my home. But the impact of 2020 was very real. Of course, we're never going to forget it, but all that I accomplished in 2020 is sometimes mind-boggling, being that the year that it was. It's sometimes bittersweet. I often held in what I was doing in 2020 because I didn't want to seem like I was bragging. And it's like, people are devastated right now, and you're like, well, I did this and I did that too. And it was a gamble, but I think, I don't want to say after we got out of it, but after, everything that we did in 2020 turned out to be what we actually won for. I took a deep breath and I was like, or I exhaled really. And it was good to just get it out and really focus on the positivity that did come out of the year too.
Yeah. Just like you were saying, I definitely felt that 2020 made people have to really focus, and it made people figure out what they really needed to do. And a lot of people really did succeed and had to learn how to pivot and learn new things, new trades, and challenge themselves to do more things. So, of course it was bad, but it did pull out some good as well.
Absolutely. It's like if I'm still here, like I'm like one out of, a certain amount that didn't make it. So I
Yeah,
need to do something and make my time worth it because a lot of people still dying.
yeah, yeah. So when did you know that you wanted to be an activist? What was that moment like for you?
That is an amazing, amazing question. I truly think there's always one police brutality murder that hit me deep. It was in 2008, 2009, technically, when Oscar Grant was murdered in Oakland, in my hometown. It was my first year, my freshman year of college, and I had just moved away. And that murder just it hit me in my core just so differently because Oscar Grant was just one of us. He was just a regular kid from the Bay Area, on the BART with his friends enjoying a New Year's Eve night. And that really, I think I've always, of course, like I said, being a Black woman from Oakland, always had these type of values rooted in me. But Oscar
Mhm.
Grant's murder really impacted me the most, and it made me feel like we can't just keep looking at these situations and being like, damn, that sucks. I can't believe that happened and moving on.
Mhm.
Because they're just gonna continue to happen as it has. And I think when that happened, I paid attention a lot to it and really it triggered my mind to see and now realize that this is happening all the time.
Mhm.
I don't think I was alive during Rodney King, but I know about it a lot. Emmett Till, all of these names and all of these things they like to label as Black history, which is really our Black trauma, all started sparking in my mind of like, this is just decades of things happening to us and nothing ever being done about it. Oscar Grant made me realize that something needed to be done about it, through and through. And still, we're over 10 years later and we're not anywhere better, which is unfortunate. But I do think that what I'm doing is trying to get away from where we have been, and accountability is trying to be held. But of course, before accountability, I just wish shit wouldn't happen. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, how important do you think it is to practice self care strategies and everything? Because sometimes you get so involved in your work and your work is heavy, you know. How important is it for practicing self care?
it's the only way to be in this work, to be honest. I see a lot of people that are in this work that don't take breaks, and I'm like, absolutely not. Even at my agency, like I said, if there's something impactful that happens that day, I'm like, everybody take the rest of the day off.
Hmm.
I'll respond on our channels, let people know that this happened, but take the rest of the day and have some quiet time. In terms of self-care, I like to label myself as, my other life is Black girl luxury. I don't hide from that. I'm like, activists should be paid. They should be paid well, and they deserve to take breaks and go and do what they need to do. That this idea that like, why is somebody profiting or there's of course those bad situations, but if I'm putting myself on the front line every single day, and you guys are calling me at 3 in the morning to come to a protest in another state, I'm gonna be compensated in other places very well. I'm gonna go speak at Facebook, and I want them to cash me out,
Yeah.
and that's just real. So with that, I'm gonna go take my luxury trips. I'm gonna go enjoy myself. I'm gonna unplug, and that's exactly what I do. Just like I said, I didn't go anywhere 2020. I was like in straight hiding mode, and usually me and my husband are like big group trip people, and we just took ourselves to Tulum. We went, did a hideout, and even other than that, I'm a world traveler. Before COVID, I've gone all across the world, seen new things, and I think that makes me feel like the work that I'm doing also is very valuable because it's an honor to be able to go across the world and see different things, and I also bring that back to my work.
Hmm.
So that's a form of my self-care. Drinking a lot of champagne, going to the pool, living in Los Angeles where it's about 75 degrees year round, and getting those mini staycations that people often also forget about too. Those are all a part of my self-care things, and getting on the Peloton too, even though I haven't been on it in a while, but when I do get on it, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm working out again.
I'm actually going to try the Peloton because I keep hearing so many people talk about it. But you just talked about you being a world traveler and everything. What cultural differences do you see when you travel globally?
Whew, that is an amazing question. I actually did a study abroad program in Italy years ago, and I think that was the biggest, like, oh, people think that Americans are stupid. That's great to find out when you're living somewhere for 5 months. The biggest cultural difference is, I think, the respect that the government or the prime ministers, whatever, have on the people that live there.
Mhm.
There's so many, like, you get on the train and it's like, pay for your ticket. Like, they have ticket conductors, but like they trust you to buy your ticket and just get where you need to go because it's affordable, it's accessible, and everybody can do it. Um, the cultural differences of, there's racism everywhere. I often say that people are like, oh, I want to leave America. I'm like, you're leaving America because of the racism. There's not school shootings every day and as much police brutality, but it's there's no escapism from you being the color that you are. And
Mhm.
you have to go wherever you are and make your, be comfortable in your own skin. But what I do see is, I don't necessarily know if it's a luxury, but other countries just also haven't seen many Black people, especially American Black people. And so that cultural difference of going elsewhere and then being able to speak English and connect with us and talk to us and share their, oh my God, you're so beautiful, you're so this. And then the privilege that Americans, tend to have, that I've traveled with other people and going to other countries and not understanding why, when people come to America, we don't speak many languages at all. And you
Right.
go to another country and they're like, I know 8 languages. And you're like, I can barely speak Spanish. Um, so cultural differences in that and the respect that they have for trying to get to know everyone that's coming into their space. And definitely, even still, just like I said, the respect that the government or the establishment has over them. Of course, I've been to some countries that were, like Iceland or Denmark, that are Sweden, that are like number one and everything. And I talk to my friends that are out there because I have really close friends in Sweden. So I get to do a lot of well, when I went to high school, they go to middle school, they get taught everything. They go to high school and they learn a trade. And
Mm.
they're like, oh, and I went to high school to be an electrician. And then I got out and they paid me to go to college. And you're like, that sounds productive.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds actually pretty great. But then you go places like Thailand where you land and you're in poverty and you see that they have no resources and you're driving to your resort that's on the other side where all these people are working, and it's like, well, that's not right either, and the American dollar is so much out there that we're out there living like Jay-Z and Beyonce, but for
Right.
them it's like it's still not enough. So
Yeah.
there's so many different cultural differences that I can think of in every single country that I've been to. But like I said, it's a blessing to be able to at least see that, because I realize that a lot of people aren't aware of what's really going on in these other countries either.
Yeah. I began touring overseas in 2007, and I was completely shocked at how much of the difference and how much we take for granted a lot of things too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so back on track. You are a Black woman that employs other women of color. Why do you feel it's so important to do that?
Women of color are impacted the most by issues in America, whether it's police brutality, whether it's our rights, abortion rights, healthcare rights, even what's going on with Build Back Better with maternal health. Women of color really make everything move forward. We are the change makers, and I think our voices should be heard the most. Often in social justice, what I learned working in it these past years, it is so heavily ran by white men. And when I got into it, I was like, well, why does that make sense? Why are white men speaking for the rights of Black and brown people when they don't understand it? They don't know what it means. Um, it never made any sense to me. And so I also took a lot of my experiences from past agencies or past people that I've worked with, where I always felt like I was getting mansplained every single day, or I was working for some man that owned the agency or owned, the idea, and they were taking all of my ideas.
Mhm.
It was truly something I absolutely hated, and I really wanted to create a safe space for women, and that I also meant away from white women because they're white women. And I was like, I just want to create this own bubble for us to freely be able to talk about what we want to, advocate for things that matter to us, and just really open a space that truly understood what it's like to be a woman every day. You wake up sometimes and you're like, my period started and I don't feel good. And people are open to say that. And they're just like, this is the best place I've ever worked, because, a lot of jobs don't understand when things come up. Like, life happens. You
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and you're just like, not today. Or, something's happening going on at your home and you're trying to juggle both because your boss is like, well, you need to get this done today. Creating an environment that I've always wanted to work in has been kind of the most important thing that I've wanted to see. And I've done exactly that, where none of my employees have quit. The only employee that I've had that left went to law school, and she was devastated. She was like, should I go? I was like, you need to go to law school. You can't work here forever. So go to law school, further yourself. But that's what I want to do. I don't want people to feel like they need to work here for 10, 20 years. I want this to be a place where they come, learn their skills, perfect them, and they move on to something better, and know that I helped them facilitate that and know what it's like to be treated correctly when you're working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So tell us what makes GSWT different.
Even exactly what I just said, with the care that I put on my employees, the type of work that we do, I think the work is fulfilling back to my employees a lot of the time. And I like to also call them my team, but they see their work being moved and being in front of these celebrities, faces, and a lot of their work moving and going across social media, which brings joy to them, but then they can also take time off. I always tell people, like, you need to take at least a consistent week off a year. Like, even if you're sitting at home, you go on a 2-week trip, take the 2 weeks off, because that's what working is about. What separates us is definitely the longevity of our work, because it's always going to be here. And I think it gives great job security, as well as just the lightheartedness of it. It's a heavy-hearted position, but working here, it's like we call our main chat that we talk in, like, our girl chat, because that's what it is. It's one big girl group chat. We're like laughing at things that are trending on Twitter. And it's also fun in that way, because we're in social media. So it's not like you're getting in trouble for looking at something on Twitter and like some funny video. We're on TikTok. We're doing all that stuff. So that's what separates us. And, we do real work, and it's impactful. And like I said, it brings something back to us, but it's also something that takes care of us mentally, and physically. I go to sleep at night knowing, like, after we found out we registered 2 million people, and I'm like, yes, like, I stayed up all 2020, but like, that means the most to me. And I can, in 10 years, if I move on to something else, that I know that I made such an impact during these very impactful years that are going to go down in history. And I one day can show my kids, like, here's what your mom helped do, during these very crucial times that you're going to learn about later on in life. And that's what separates us. I feel great that all of these women get to be a part of all of this history that we've made in the last year. And I'm just really excited to know what we can accomplish in the next 5.
Okay. So can you tell the listeners about the impactful hashtags that you built, such as School's Not Prison, Rise Up as One, People Power, Athletes for Impact?
I can go on with hashtags. I'm like a hashtag generator, including even Rock the Vote. That's been a hashtag for 30 years, but it didn't come back to life till 2018. And even the the ED of Rock the Vote can tell you herself, like, yeah, I don't know what we were doing before we found Teja. I got the page, and it was like, they had like maybe like 5,000 followers really that were even active. They weren't verified. It still looked like 90s rock band. And I was just like, why are we still here if we're focusing now on voters of color? They don't care about this. Transforming that page into what it is now, I mean, it has over 160,000 followers, which happened in under 2 years. So building stuff like that, Schools Not Prisons, which is my baby hashtag, that page now has moved into all year round type of advocacy, which before it was just for the tour. We were going into prisons, going into communities, and they're just like, oh, we just need somewhere to put it on. And then I turned it into the biggest page that it is now for the Schools to Prison pipeline. They have a podcast going. They're still going into prisons, doing live shows, stuff like that. So a lot of the hashtag, even Athletes for Impact, that was, I like to say, sparked and moved the idea a lot for even what LeBron is doing with More Than an Athlete. Athletes for Impact, we worked with Layla Ali, with Maya Moore. We helped her with everything she did for getting Jonathan Ayers out of jail. So hashtags like that are even the baseline, I think, that are a lot of the grassroots work that a lot gets scaled up in later in life, and people start to realize, like, yeah, we are impactful too. We do these things too. So a lot of the hashtags that I've built have definitely been lifelong ones, and I'm grateful for it, that they're still standing strong, and that a lot of the base material that I gave them are still like thriving through.
That's really good. So you've been featured in major press features such as CNN, USA Today, Entertainment Weekly, and others. What one publication do you want to be featured in that you haven't been featured in yet? You got to speak it
Forbes.
into existence.
Forbes, because and that means I'm making some money.
Right.
Forbes will probably be the biggest one. I, of course, would love a Black publication, like I would say like an Essence, and not just a feature. I would really love like a full like story in a magazine. I got featured in InStyle, which was a full page moment to our agency, which was amazing. But to get in a Black publication, I think would be absolutely joyous to me and really to my viewers and to people that are wanting to do the same thing. But I would say between like Essence and definitely Forbes, because I want to make some money.
Okay. So what figure person gave you the motivation to do the things that you are doing now?
My grandmother, definitely. My grandmother moved to California, well, the Bay Area from Tennessee back in like 95 maybe. Not 1995, 1985. And she came out here to be the VP of the Urban League and open up the Bay Area chapter of the Urban League. She came out here again doing the nonprofit activism work before I even came about. And she's been doing that for years. She went back and forth between Urban League and United Way, building her name, becoming the president, becoming all of these amazing things that she has under her belt, which is kind of why I moved away from the Bay Area, because everyone's like, aren't you Carol Watson's granddaughter? And I'm like, I am, but I need to go. So moving to LA was me kind of building on that same foundation, just in my own space and not feeling like I'm getting any handouts, which actually sucks that I did that, because it's like, we should be getting handouts. White people get handouts all the time. Using those resources that I had through my grandmother would have been amazing, but I still actually am doing that, because most of my clients now are like, I worked with your grandmother back in da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, well, great. Of course, you know my grandma.
Okay, so you enjoy hip hop and traveling, as you had already spoke about. What do you think about hip hop today, and do you feel that it has more messages on mainstream that could change Black and brown communities if they, came together?
Absolutely. Hip hop music is, it is the mainstream. It's the biggest genre of music out right now. And, I think the other side of rap that we all hate, I think it's needed, because as much people as, they don't like to admit it, what we've also seen in these versus battles is like, oh, we used to listen to this. And as much as we can try and talk about what's going on in today's time, it's like we had our few, like those back then. But I do wish more like conscious rap, or even at least rappers, musicians in general, pushing forward narrative that's actually, I don't want to say impactful or true, but just for a greater cause. I think that there are a lot of conscious rappers, but they're also against voting. They're also against about, talking about vaccines and things like that. But I think, people were laughing at like that Juvenile vax that thing up. And I was like, that's genius. I'm like, you have to connect with people where they are, essentially. I would love if we could get more presence in the people that are talking about impactful things. Like Rhapsody also gets left out of the female rap conversation all the time. And it's like, she's one of the greatest lyricists we have right now. But people aren't thinking about that because she's not doing the things the other girls are doing. But I always think that there's a way to advance our hip hop music. And even with, I love where like the direction Beyonce has gone in. I'm a Beyonce stan anyway though, but just the emphasis that she puts on a lot of her music, and people are like, oh, it's getting too Black, it's getting too da-da-da. And it's like, as it should, like she's made her stake in the pop music lane, and she's doing stuff that actually impacts people and motivates people. Me getting married on Juneteenth, we basically played Jay-Z, Beyonce, and all of that stuff the whole day. We had all this, real Black music, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna, be freedom. We're gonna do all of that today in a new age way. But I would love to see, of course, a different change in the hip hop community. But I think it's there. I just think people need to pay attention to it. But it's very hard to pay attention. It's just so much music out there.
There's a lot of music out there. But I can also say, being in the entertainment world and touring and singing all over the world, sometimes it's hard because you don't, I personally try not to put my political views out there or any of these things, because that affects how you get paid sometimes. You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's hard for artists, you want to stay away from all of this extra stuff,
No, that is a very, very good point. And it is the gamble because then sometimes it's like Cardi B was stepping up. People are like, shut up. I don't want to hear that. But it's like, but no, you can't do that. You know, like you want somebody to connect with people that are interested in it, or do you want people to stray away from it?
Mhm.
I think, there's a lot of pushback of when Kim Kardashian was getting people released from jail. And I'm like, can you really be upset about that? Like she's doing the work, she's connecting with the organizations and she's getting people freed. Are you gonna be mad because she had a sex tape? Like, I mean, she's doing she's doing more than a lot of other people are. Like, I don't know what you like. Which one do you want? Do you want people freed or do you want people to stay in? But I completely agree with you because then people get ridiculed for it, for their opinions, and something that used to be very private is now very public, and you have to say something. I think it's hard though. We're living in a different time where it's like, LeBron James is expected to speak up about things and talk about things when he's asked about basketball, but Michael Jordan wasn't held to that standard because he's completely stayed away from politics. But if LeBron was to stay away from politics now, he'd get ridiculed. It's an unfair gamble, I think, and people I do think have the right to their opinions. I think with the last administration that we had, it made it really difficult for people to not have to respect not having an opinion because it was doing so much to our community.
Mhm.
But I agree. I think there's a really fine line between it, and I don't disagree or agree with anybody that it's like you should be doing more, you should be da da da. But what I do believe is speaking up for police brutality and wrongful deaths. That is one thing that I'm just like, you could be whatever you want to be and vote for whoever want to be, but like
Mhm.
police officers killing unarmed Black people, you go against that, then we don't have anything to talk about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand that. I definitely understand that. So I want to know, how can people be a part of your circle? Tell people how you can be reached and everything like that.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. Like I said, I am my own activist in my own community. So my Instagram is at Teja Tej, Teja, wait, Teja, Teja Tej, Teja. I always have that problem. That's Instagram and Twitter. And even right here, getsocialwithteja.com. You also go there and be able to see all of our personal pages, all of our client pages as well. Not client pages, our agency pages as well. So we do have our agency pages where we're updating on our client work and what we're doing. And then I have my personal page. If you want to see me, talking about verses and then talk about Kamala and then talk about all these different random things, I'm like a full spectrum of everything that's going on on Twitter. So yeah, Teja Tej on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank you so much for being a part of Transparency Talks podcast. I definitely learned a whole lot about your company and about yourself. So thank you so much for being a part. And with that, everyone, we are out of here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you so much. Nice talking to you.
Thank you.